All right, hi, I'm John Sumser, and welcome to the HR Examiner. Today we've got co-founder Heather Bussing, who describes herself as doing the percussion for the band. And today we're going to get to have a romp with Matt Charney. Matt, if you don't know who Matt Charney is, shame on you. Matt is one of the most insightful voices in all of HRTech. He's played all of the roles. He's played bass, he's played drums, he's played lead guitar, he's been a recruiter, he's been in and around recruiting, he advises private equity clients and acquisitions, he probably fixes cars for a living on the side. He's just a jack of all trades. Yeah. So he's an awesome writer and knows what he's talking about. And so today, we're just going to wander through the world with Matt a little bit and see what's going on. So I'll kick it off. You have this amazing reputation for being extremely insightful and extremely snarky at the same time. How do you keep that edge working?
I mean, it's pretty simple. I think that, and this is absolutely even more dramatic of the case after the introduction of generative AI, but like voice, tone, and style are really sort of what get people to read and engage with content. So as the old phrase goes, good content makes you swear, share, or care. I prefer, or I guess it's easier to make people swear, and then generally they share, is how that works. I think that AI, it's like big data certainly was, or social probably a little bit before that, where it's let's add this to whatever our product marketing is, and we're going to 10x our valuation, right? And I can't tell you how many HRTech or RecFest booths there were the first ever end-to-end AI platform. I think there were like 5 of them. So everyone's like making the same sort of claim. I really care about 3 questions when I look at a product, and AI is the means to accomplish any recruiting task, but it's certainly not the end of that. So I want to know basically how products make their end users' life easier, both recruiters and candidates. What actual tangible way do you make it so that I don't have to, dick around? And often that's the AI answer.
All right, hi, I'm John Sumser, and welcome to the HR Examiner. Today we've got co-founder Heather Bussing, who describes herself as doing the percussion for the band. And today we're going to get to have a romp with Matt Charney. Matt, if you don't know who Matt Charney is, shame on you. Matt is one of the most insightful voices in all of HRTech. He's played all of the roles. He's played bass, he's played drums, he's played lead guitar, he's been a recruiter, he's been in and around recruiting, he advises private equity clients and acquisitions, he probably fixes cars for a living on the side. He's just a jack of all trades.
You should see my car.
And he's an awesome writer. He is
that out of all that stuff, that one I'll give myself.
Yeah. So he's an awesome writer and knows what he's talking about. And so today, we're just going to wander through the world with Matt a little bit and see what's going on. So I'll kick it off. You have this amazing reputation for being extremely insightful and extremely snarky at the same time. How do you keep that edge working?
I mean, it's pretty simple. I think that, and this is absolutely even more dramatic of the case after the introduction of generative AI, but like voice, tone, and style are really sort of what get people to read and engage with content. So as the old phrase goes, good content makes you swear, share, or care. I prefer, or I guess it's easier to make people swear, and then generally they share, is how that works. But ultimately it comes down to, I would say, writing ability, domain expertise, and I do not make hot takes, despite the fact that everyone likes to put me in the category of like, oh, that was a hot take. That was like a snarky opinion or whatever. I probably wouldn't still be around if I didn't validate all my data sources with third-party data. So I researched the heck out of
Ooh. So you're saying that it's not just a magic trick, that you actually do work to get as good as you are.
it. No, I actually just I woke up like this. No, here's the thing though, guys. Like ultimately, I hope that long form content still has a place, but ultimately, I do enjoy writing. I didn't know that I did until I stopped doing it for like 5 years. And so I'm just kind of like getting back into practice.
Cool. So you've seen the world from a bunch of interesting chairs. That gives you this
Including
kind
the floor.
That's true. Touche.
That's true. That's only funny because you'd be familiar with the location.
Yes.
Heather.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I sit on the floor all the time. I've sat on the floor with Matt. It's my favorite introvert trick, and that was the reference. But I suppose we could go to the Dean Martin expression, which is you're not drunk if you can lie on the floor without holding on.
I like that. I like that. I hope it was said about Sammy Davis, frankly. But
Yeah. Well, as someone who also is familiar with the floor in that context, but not for many years.
Yeah. Well, so you've sat in all these chairs, and that gives you this really well-rounded view of things. But there are a lot of, as you know, I'm sure, there are a lot of paradoxes in the difference between the perspectives people have based on where they sit in the process. And so I want to fumble around with this question, which is how do you keep all that straight, and how do you pick which perspective you are looking from?
I guess that depends largely on what the medium is I'm writing for. So, if it's a blog post, that's obviously going to be a lot more nuanced and has a lot more research and context than, let's say, like a LinkedIn update that I'll do from a brand voice. But just in terms of, I guess, keeping everything just perspective-wise, I go in with like they teach you how to write in elementary school, right? I go in with a hypothesis. I research to test it. Oftentimes it works, and if it doesn't, I'll manipulate the data so it does. And then I will sit down and I'll write it based off of the story the data is telling me, frankly. And then everything else I'll do just one pass at the end to add voice. But other than that, yeah, it's like writing a research paper or a book report. Probably is the better analogy.
Got it. So besides writer, right? That writer is a category without a home. Are you an analyst? Are you a pundit? Are you a editor?
I'm against No, I think like the consistently like writer is probably it. That informs certainly everything I do. But I think that the other things I work on are the analysis side, where to your point about wearing different hats, that's really been an interesting evolution for me. And trying to kind of be a little bit more legit now. And then I would say editor, because even with ChatGPT, one of my greatest like joys is helping other people produce awesome writing. And so like I work pretty closely with a lot of people to do that.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Yeah, what does that look like?
So a lot of times it looks like somebody sends me a draft. What do you think? Oftentimes, though, and this certainly was the case more at Recruiting Daily, I'm going to be ramping back up to this now that I'm taking over the Media Bistro sites and populating those a little bit more. But certainly, I put out a call for content, and generally that will be offering a platform for visibility. And then what I also do is a pilot program. So I pay $100 a post for anything that goes on my platform, which is $100 more than the market rate. And it means that I can have the IP, right? And so then we see based off of traffic where that's going to go. But, I have some of the most incredible writers in this space have just like come in from random LinkedIn requests or blind emails saying, here's a draft. Let me see it. And so, that's certainly how I've made a lot of the relationships that I continue to this day, and they've become some of the stronger voices in the industry.
So now let me see if I got all the pieces. You are currently sort of a roving editor for ERE.
Yes.
You're doing Media Bistro sites.
Yes.
What else is in your bucket?
So I am working with Kyle Lagunas and Kyle & Co. As their principal analyst for industry and markets, which is a fancy way of saying everyone else is kind of covering enterprise and AI, but I am actually covering the opposite end of stuff, which is much more focused on startups, M&A, ecosystem, strategic alliances, and consumer tech trends that are bleeding over. So all of the stuff that really is not your traditional enterprise ERP, so everything that's VC backed.
So is that recruiting centric, or is it broader than recruiting centric?
I mean, it certainly can be broader than recruiting centric, and I don't know that a lot of the technologies that I'm seeing right now are necessarily explicit for recruiting purposes, because you have a lot of bleed over between talent acquisition and talent management, right? Like with things like internal mobility, skills, succession planning and management. So there's kind of a bleed over between those two. But certainly when it comes to assessments, internal mobility, and like L&D sort of work, that's definitely, I would say, in my remit, just given where most of these products are serving.
So what's left after you take the AI out of all those things? When I look out there, it's hard to see anybody who isn't just flaunting AI. And so if there's other tech out there, it's hard to see.
Yeah, well, I think that AI, it's like big data certainly was, or social probably a little bit before that, where it's let's add this to whatever our product marketing is, and we're going to 10x our valuation, right? And I can't tell you how many HRTech or RecFest booths there were with the first ever end-to-end AI platform. I think there were like 5 of them, right? So everyone's like making the same sort of claim. To me, I really care about 3 questions when I look at a product, and AI is the means to accomplish any recruiting task, but certainly not the end of that, which is making a hire. So I want to know basically how products make their end users' life easier, both recruiters and candidates, right? Like what actual tangible way do you make it so that I don't have to, dick around? And often that's the AI answer. Although so we can save time so that recruiters don't have to do the stuff they hate is to me an asinine argument, because like recruiters are still going to figure out a way to waste time, right? But I certainly think that there's that question. The second question is how you make money. That's a really important question, because oftentimes it's not what you would think on the pricing if we go into it. So sometimes it's reselling data, sometimes it's strategic alliances and partnerships, sometimes it's like a services-led kind of technology, or tech-enabled services, I think is the better phrase. So that tells me a little bit about just kind of where they're sitting, where their goals are, and helps me to kind of figure out their stage. And then the most important question, and this is one that I love watching AI vendors try to answer, is what is the single thing that you are the proudest of and that's the most differentiating of your product, right? Because oftentimes I'll get the exact same answer for that, which means that I'll write it. That is a rule.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. For as long as I've been around the business, it has been a space where people have an incredibly difficult time differentiating themselves. Right? Everything sounds the same. And it is very, very difficult to get as explicit as you need to be to talk about the value that you're delivering so somebody's ready to pay you. It all sounds like mush. Are you fixing that?
I mean, I'm not fixing it. No, certainly I cannot fix crappy marketing, and it's getting worse, right? But having sat in that product marketing chair, you don't really have like this huge view of the world. So if you're saying I'm the first to market with this product, that's probably true in your knowledge, right? And so what I really work to do is figure out what these products do and move it away from that asinine product marketing and talk about it in plain English. And that's why, again, I focus on process and I focus on outcomes, because those are the two things that are going to be agnostic in terms of like category or technology. And there are some that don't fit a tight definition. And rather than try to put them into a bucket like a lot of people, I do think that I kind of am trying to assist more on the category creation side for those vendors that really do stand out. But certainly, I can't fix product marketing, and I'm honestly not even that good at it.
Right.
So
yep. It's a transactional sport.
It is, for sure.
So it's inevitable that this will drift towards AI. Inevitable, even though you swore it off at the beginning of the conversation. How do you see it actually playing off? There's so much hype. It is so thick right now that it's becoming very difficult to imagine what's actually going to happen. What do you see? What do you see coming?
It'd be great if I knew the answer so I could invest better. Here's honestly like the thing that I think is going to happen is we are going to see a reversion a little bit from AI into, and you talk about differentiation, I think like much more tactile or personalized outreach and engagement is going to be a pretty big driver. And I do, and maybe this is like, affinity bias, but I think that basically the people with the strongest sort of sounding voice and brand and tone and perspective are going to get the most results, because it's obviously like, all AI is doing is enabling scale. And I actually don't think you need scale. And I think we're starting to see pushback because, John, like one of the things I hate almost as much as AI is that asinine candidate experience conversation, right? And it's one we've been having forever. And now that conversation's flipping because, as it turns out, that was the UI UX conversation, right? It was like, how do we make people apply easier? It's like, well, make your, design intuitive and not suck, right? So I think that what you see now is a bunch of vendors who are out there saying, oh, well, now we're going to help it cut down on all these volume of applicants because, and we're going to provide them with a completely automated and frictionless candidate experience, which is not a candidate experience at all. That is an application workflow. Ultimately,
oh, that's awesome. Write that down. It's not a candidate experience; it's an application workflow.
It is. And so here's what I see is when you look at adoption rates, you look at annualized spend. What's interesting is the companies aren't really, in my perspective right now, cutting budget out of recruiting. They are shifting it from headcount to tech. So what you're starting to see is people investing much more heavily in the AI space at the expense of the people who were there, right? And probably they'll figure if we need it, we'll get a project recruiter or something. And I don't think that approach is going to work, right? Like for a while, everyone thought that social media was going to be like the silver bullet and, aggregate, whatever that source of hire is. To me, basically, the efficacy of recruiting comes down to process, again, and it comes down to business alignment and being able to just make a damn hire. And so you don't need to do things at scale. But what I think is going to happen is as we put all of this capital into AI, quote unquote, that makes a much stronger need to demonstrate ROI and alignment with the greater business, particularly because oftentimes you're working within a larger AI framework or InfoSec environment. And so what I think is going to happen is that in trying to prove those ROI, you're going to see that these are these like point solutions that are white labeling ChatGPT. So I think like half of it's going to be compliance. It's going to knock out a lot of the use cases that we're seeing right now, yet to be tested. Yep. But that would be my take. And then the other half, I think, in looking at ROI, we're going to revert to Taylorism in a certain extent, which is to say we're going to look at every single thing a person does in such a granular like way. So how much time savings seems to be a critical metric, which is not actually an ROI factor. That's an opportunity cost, which you can't measure, but nobody went to business school. So I think that ultimately, only would prove that is by like scientific management or a very similar approach to that, where you're literally widgetizing humans and putting them into process and then judging them by the amount of work units that they exert doing individualized tasks. right? And so
Right,
that's
but that, I mean, isn't that another name for human trafficking?
I could come up with many other names for human trafficking. That wouldn't be one of them. No, it's definitely not human trafficking. Now I'm distracted. Thank you. No, human trafficking is free internships.
We're trying to mathify people,
Or
and we're
H1B.
trying to automate the hiring of human beings.
Yeah.
And we're trying to quantify it and expedite it, and and how long until everybody just throws up their hands in the air and say, "I'm hiring my friend Joe"?
I mean, that's continuing to happen, and you're seeing that across the board, right? Like, it is not really changed significantly in the 2 decades or so I've been doing this in terms of source of hire breakdown. Internal's always number one, referrals are always number two. And so I think that I've always said this prior to AI, if you spend the amount of time you spend sourcing external candidates and building pipelines on identifying internal players and then also building relationships to gain referrals, that's going to be a much better use of your time. And so, John, I think companies that are doing that, and really more aligned with the business, they sort of already are, seeing it like that. But Heather, to your point about human trafficking, I actually just think it's supply chain management, which is you're trying to get something through a process with as little friction as possible for as cheaply as possible. And it doesn't matter what they actually are as long as they meet the criterion that you've already set in our.
But it takes all the humanity out.
Exactly. Well, yeah, absolutely. But, I think HR is
and we're treating people like things.
Yes, we are. But I think that...
And I have always objected to the concept of human capital or human resources. I mean, these are people with families and friends and lives and bills and skills and creativity and heart and soul and delight. And we still haven't figured out how to take that all into account and value it for what it actually is, which is how we want to spend our lives and who we want to spend our lives with at work.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I think that's certainly the case in high volume or hourly hiring, right? You have the essential workers, and the assumptions are that they're going to churn quickly, so no need to work on actively retaining them at most companies. And two, that the process is it's just got to be about speed because they can get the same job across the street for 10 cents an hour more. So really, that's the approach. Recently, I had the opportunity I was working on a feature article for Transform. So I talked to 30 hourly workers in just various professions here in the Dallas area, everyone from a warehouse worker to a registered nurse, right? And the registered nurse, I got to say, I missed the boat on that lucrative career, but they all had one piece of HR technology that they care about. We spent all this time talking about AI, and they don't care. They care about the time clock, right? Time and attendance. That is the only use case that hourly workers care about. They do not know who their HR representatives are, but they wish that they did. But there's a little bit of fear there as well. So I think what HR does need to do is, and particularly in these cases, forget employer branding. Just go and live out the culture a little bit, and really see what that is from a frontline perspective. And then I think even if your process doesn't change, you'll still have a little bit more appreciation for the humanity, because when you're trying to fill 16,000 of the same requisition, it is pretty easy to lose sight of the fact that these are people when it's so processed.
You have such an interesting point of view. 85% of the people in our country work in companies with fewer than 100 people in it, right? Yeah. And much of what you're talking about just simply doesn't apply there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because an individual 100-person company in Duluth, Minnesota that does scuba equipment manufacturing has an entirely different labor market set of needs, an entirely different array of people, and specialties that don't really look like other jobs. The scuba tube fit guy or whatever you have in in the company is niche specific stuff that you can't really turn into an automated process. The sort of systems and outcomes view is for companies with 500 or more people, which in a lot of places is considered enterprise. Right? Because you have to have flow before you can start talking about systematizing processes. And if you've got 100 people in your company and you've got 10% growth and 15% attrition, it means that you're hiring 2 people a month.
Yeah.
Right. It might have peaks and valleys, but the sort of level set, the average is two a month in most companies, and 2 a month. You must have pieces of software that you use twice a month. And what's the problem with pieces of software that you use twice a month is you can never remember what the hell there's for.
Yeah, or the password.
Yeah, or the password, or the password, or how you do that special thing that you got to do so that you can do the thing that you need to do. That's always opaque and buried in the theory that a good piece of software turns people into widgets so you can standardize the process and use the flow to make things happen. I wonder if recruiting isn't missing the boat by treating the market as if it's all enterprise clients rather than small clients.
Yeah, I think that you see technology vendors certainly serving the SMB market. And they'll set it at 1,000 or 5,000 employees would generally be the distinguishing between let's say a mid-sized business and enterprise. So it'll float between those companies. So I do think that some of the best applicant tracking systems, like an Ashby, for example, that is low cost. It can be deployed quickly, and the way that their pricing works is not enterprise grade, but the features and functionality certainly are. But I think when it comes to just view of the world and perspective, those companies do not have dedicated, generally, TA resources. It'll either be hiring manager self-service, or it'll be like an HRBP who's responsible for overseeing the hiring process. And so given that that's oftentimes not their primary responsibility or, focus, they're just not a great audience to write content for, right? So yeah, I do think it skews enterprise, because I would say that the 85% of recruiters, full-time recruiters in the US, likely work for companies that are not in the SMB space, with the exception of agencies. But yeah, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's such a weird line, because the money is certainly in volume. The money is certainly in large scale suppliers, but the problem isn't. The problem of recruiting happens outside of the world where SaaS is really a relevant thing, and outside of the world where some generic chat bot is going to be able to make an adequate match between your culture and what's out in the market, because the cultural variables at a 100-person company are so broad that you can't really bucket them easily, even if they're in the precise same business.
And I think that's fair. Yeah, absolutely. But also, culture is generally greenfield at a smaller company, right? So they can impact it much more as an individual than you could at an enterprise, for sure. Yeah.
Let me see something here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm concerned.
He's got a question.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to my friendly oracle here, which is not going to answer me. I think the number is there are 35,000 companies with more than 1,000 employees. It is a tiny, tiny little number. It is such a small number that if you had 10 people making 10 phone calls a day, you could talk to them all in a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So it seems to me that what's liable to happen with AI is it's liable to make that quote down market way more productive, and that's an interesting case about what are the limits of measurement-based artificial intelligence. And so by measurement-based, I mean language is a measurement. Counting of people is a measurement, counting of residents, all sorts of measurements, and everything that we see in AI right now is just a function of measurement. It's just a thin layer of correlations pasted over a very rich layer of reality. And what I think happens is that as people use this, the tool's capacity to be more in tune with the very micro niche case starts to explode fairly quickly. That's actually what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. It is just like projection, right? That's how generative AI works. It's what's the likeliest next token in this chain. So yeah, I mean, I think that all makes sense. John, let me just say it. You're really smart, and I don't know exactly how to just look at AI and its implications for the reason that you talk about like certain things. And I wonder if these are, I don't have the individual SMB use cases yet, but I think about the fact that you need a shared ontology. So I think that's a limit, because obviously like you can make that much larger and like a Microsoft than you could a 100-person company. So if you're training an instance, the training's going to be slower by the fact that that's limited training data, right? I also think when it comes to like, I'll call it phenomenology, although that's the incorrect term, the way that it learns, right? The way that it learns and gathers information is going to be different on a per instance basis either, and that comes down really to the amount of sophistication of like an engineering or tech team to be able to utilize an instance. And the other thing is, if you've ever used Replit, like you can certainly appreciate this, or there are actually now a few of them that will charge by processing costs for AI. And so I think that what you can do with X amount of budget is going to be very different at an enterprise employer versus, another one, just because like we're talking not a fixed cost in a lot of cases, lots of variable costs, and there are lots of processing. So how do you keep that under control? That's going to be a challenge that I think is going to be much more critical for smaller businesses than larger businesses who generally tend to have some sort of partnership or hosting agreement in place.
Well, so I wonder, when I look out at the marketplace, I see some clouds aligning to make a storm. One of them is pay transparency, right? And if pay transparency, which is some alignment between roles and compensation expectations, if pay transparency succeeds, you start to see the emergence of a taxonomy or an ontology that transcends individual companies, right? That's what the data will do, is start to price specific jobs in specific markets in specific industries, and that structure is bigger than any individual company, and so you imagine that, like, I think this happens in Europe already, that there are pay rates established for every job in Europe. And so if you know what your next door neighbor is doing and how long they've been doing it, you know how much money they make. And it's broadly understood that way in Europe. It isn't here yet, but that's where pay transparency takes you. And so the thing that I think happens is all of that fuss processing at the enterprise level makes technology that will flow quickly into SMB markets because this stuff wants to personalize. This stuff wants to be relevant in a niche.
Yeah. The thing that I think is going to add a layer of complexity to all this is there's a pretty high correlation, or I guess it would be an inverse correlation, between number of employees and number of contractors / like contingent workers. So the smaller companies are going to generally have a higher percentage of contractors, project hires, and non-traditional employees. And so I think that when you start looking at that total talent picture, which is becoming more prevalent, then pay transparency is going to get even harder, because then that becomes like various elements that aren't just a W-2, but also a business secret to the extent it's pricing.
That's interesting. That hops to the next sort of view, which is, it seems to me that recruiting or whatever I'm not sure the function will stand over time, but decision about how to get work done, which is what recruiting fundamentally is. It's a decision about how to get work done. Now has, do we hire? Do we outsource? Do we subcontract? Do we build an agent internally? Do we pay somebody to build an agent for us? And those are the decisions you have to make before you go to deciding whether or not you're going to actually recruit somebody. Because it's a job. Job can be done in a variety of ways. And what's the most cost-effective and highest return for the company for doing a job in X ways? And so I imagine, I haven't seen anything like this yet, but I imagine a workflow that says, here's the job. A job description, by the way, is a great spec for an agent. Here's the job. Here's what it'll cost to hire somebody. Here's what it'll cost to outsource it. Here's what it'll cost to build an agent. Here's what it'll cost to ignore it. And that's the first decision in talent acquisition.
Yeah, I mean, we tried to build one of those at Allegis for my entire tenure there. As it turns out, like a CAD system for talent, pretty hard to build given the variables. But whoever can crack that code, I'll be more than happy to buy or license that technology because I haven't seen it either.
Oh, cool. What are the variables? What do you think the variables are?
Location, experience, education / company pedigree, supply and demand. I would say market rate on an hourly versus annualized basis, the cost of benefits that are associated with it, and also engineering capacity if you're going to make that build decision.
That's right. No, those are all the things. It seems to me that world, which is a structured ontology of some kind with all of the scopes that you've laid out, that world is coming to be now. Yeah. It's coming to be, and it's coming out of compensation, which is a surprise thing. One of my little drums to beat while I am transitioning here between corporate and back to the HR Examiner is that compensation is the foundation of work. And compensation has all of those dimensions: skills, location, industry, job, level, responsibilities, all of those things. There are already tools out there that factor all of that stuff. What hasn't happened yet is that data has not been moved effectively into the adjacent places: recruiting, finance, learning and development. But in the compensation function, all of that stuff exists now. And so this gets to are these silos that we have taken for granted for the last 40 years actually going to hold? Is I think my most interesting question about what's happening technically. Because what we're doing right now is automating shit stuff that we know how it works, and we're not taking advantage of the capacity to do what we haven't been able to imagine. So this is Henry Ford building things that look a whole lot like carriages rather than something further down the road in the evolution of automobiles. It's very primitive currently.
And then occasionally see an outlier like a Cybertruck, you're just like, what the hell is that? And you get offended, right?
But what happens when we widgetize information workers? I mean, and we just industrialize... Huh?
I said, I think to some degree we already are widgetized knowledge workers.
Well, I know, and it's a problem.
Why? Why do you think it's a problem?
Because if you reduce everything to repeatable processes so they can be optimized and maximized, you lose all the things that are interesting about information and understanding and learning and innovation and creativity and actually doing the work in a way that it's even possible to exceed expectations. Because when you automate everything, you are just driving everything to the basic process, and there's no room for anything else.
This is what every blacksmith said to every Ford offer for employment, right? That you can't automate everything in blacksmithing because it takes all the artisanal quality out of it. And guess what?
Yeah, no.
This is just the industrialization of knowledge work. That's all it is. It's the same shit that's been going on for 200
and I'm
years.
saying, is this something that we actually want? And does this get us to where we want to be as human beings on this planet? That
I think it could, Heather, to your point.
Yeah.
The problem is who runs it, right? So, like, I mean, you had the effective altruist movement sort of thanks to SPF, but I do think that we are at a possibility, and it's like, John, you want to talk about, like, reverse everything you know, where we could be seeing like the technological paradigm that is so powerful that we don't have to work all the time. We don't have to define ourselves by our job and our work. We get to spend more time on leisure.
That for forever.
Well,
I want my flying car. Where is it?
Well,
it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen because money is more important than people, and the people with the money don't care about what happens to the rest.
The latter being the exact right reason. The people with the money are the ones who are screwed up. That polarity, right?
Well, I don't want to rise to the defense of the 1%, but the reason that the three of us have work is this was done to an entire generation of blacksmiths, right? The reason that we have this thing that you like so much, Heather, is because the last thing was automated. And there will be something similar that pops up after this round of automation is done.
Yeah.
I don't have to spend my time taking care of the horse and riding the horse multiple days to visit a friend. I don't have to do that anymore. I can get on a Zoom call with my friend Matt Charney anytime. And yay! I mean, I'm in favor of that. But what are the logical consequences of all of this automation of things that we have generally wanted people to be creative and use critical thinking for? And what are we going to lose in that process? And I'm not saying it's not worth exploring. I'm saying nobody's asking these questions, and why aren't we talking about them?
Yeah, and it concerns me too, like that we're moving into this weird post-literacy or even post-critical thinking to your point, because people are so reliant, they've anthropomorphized LLMs, which is that's the first red flag right there. When you think that you're talking to a human, it's not. Like, there's some scary shit going on. So yeah, I think that ultimately, what's gonna, like, there's just so much hype and so many different potential outcomes. But I think, to your point, at the end of the day, the people who are already going to be displaying those dimensions of creativity, of problem solving, of all these different things are already going to be the least, this is a theory, but are going to be the least likely to be reliant on it and still be able to therefore show those traits out and bring that net into a company or any project.
So the thing that's worth pointing out here, the three of us have all worked in actual jobs in actual companies. And the idea that critical thinking is something that we're about to lose strikes me as other than the evidence that I've seen. And I know that's true for the two of you too, whether or not you feel comfortable saying it, that critical thinking has been a holy grail for 50, 75, 100 years. And you could just look at politics and see maybe there's not so much critical thinking going on around the world.
Lawyers are filing briefs full of AI slop and hallucinated cases. I mean, it's like we are offloading our our creative and human and mental capacities.
I would kind of buy that, except I've seen what lawyers do.
Yeah, the processing costs are the new photocopy fee.
Yeah,
So,
they're just cutting and pasting from a different source.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It's the exact same stuff. Because
I would disagree, but
Would too,
but I
based off the
understand
red
the
lines I've
impression. Yeah.
well, we should do this some more. I know you're on a schedule, Matt, so we want to respect the
I'm
schedule.
good.
But
I just appreciate the time to get on and talk to you. And I'm just kind of curious, John, if I can have. I want to ask a question that you asked. Elevator safety, what's the future look like to you with all?
Well, so there's two pieces of it. There's the short-term future, and the short-term future is pretty ugly. And it has nothing to do with AI other than the markets are saturated with AI hype. And the only thing, so if you look at the map, 24 of the 50 United States are in deep recession already. And if you look at the behavior that people are describing as AI caused, it's almost all traditional signs of a recession. Slowing down of hiring, a deeper emphasis on quality, all of that stuff, the termination of hundreds of thousands of recruiting jobs. This is what happens in a recession.
It is.
And the only thing that's keeping the economy as a whole out of the recession is this massive AI bubble and healthcare. And healthcare has got this incredible demand curve that there are not enough people to supply into the demand curve. And AI, I'm of the opinion that basically all of the venture capital money is gone. Basically all of the private equity money is gone. And that what's keeping the bubble afloat is the big companies writing each other contracts that can be confused with revenue.
You're not wrong.
Right. So that's a house of cards that all you have to blow one out of the corner and the whole thing comes tumbling down. And that looks like 1929 to me. Now, on the other side of 1929, all of the automotive and aerospace technology that had been developing in the teens and the 20s blossomed into some really, really interesting stuff. But it took rinsing a whole lot of hope out of the economy before you could get to the place where that was there. We might get our first taste of that when they cut off access to food for kids.
Yeah.
On the 1st of November.
What a country.
Or they raise the race for healthcare so severely that nobody can afford it.
Which I guess takes care of the
these are the triggers that are sitting in front of us, and so that'll collapse the bubble. And then when bubbles collapse, they always have the seeds of the next thing in them, right? The idealism of the first generation of the web was a remarkable thing. The economic engine that was created post.com boom was not the original vision, but it was an extraordinary accomplishment. It was the crisp invention of surveillance technology, and look at all we've done with that. Same thing is going to happen.
Data! I generate data! I train algorithms!
So I think the future's bright with a couple of bumps in the road.
Big bumps.
Big bumps. And the way that we used to do stuff is going to be the biggest problem. So all of this automation of existing processes, it's got a short shelf life.
Gotcha. I mean, I agree. And hopefully we don't need a war to get us out on the other end, like in 1929.
Yeah, but by the way, have you got a spare room?
Yeah. I do.
Because we may be coming to visit you.
Yeah, come on down. Nobody wants to screw with Dallas, so I'll tell you that right now. So there's nothing of value here. So yeah, but come on down. I do have 2 extra bedrooms, in fact, because we live in a nice tax-free state. But yeah, man, I'm scared, to be honest, with the way everything's shaking out. But there's so much uncertainty. That's why I almost like feel like being like a pundit or anything like a lot of people in my space call ourselves a futurist. And I just will be the first to raise my hand right now and say, I don't really know. To your point, you can take the past as precedent, but I don't know that short of the backstory for Terminator 2, that we've seen anything like this.
Yeah. But and that's why I think we're going to need our best creative and critical thinkers.
Yeah. To plan a repopulation of another planet, I'm sure. So
I'd like to try and save this one.
Yeah, me too. We just need a Roosevelt.
I have some kids who are depending on it.
Yeah. Me too. Or will. So, yeah. No, it's an interesting place right now. And we used to complain how slow technology moved, and now it's almost like I don't know if it's too fast or the theory, but it's like it's becoming so many variables that it's hard to draw educated predictions based off of the proliferation of new technologies, some of which are real, some of which aren't. But how do you audit agentic? I don't know, because it kind of defeats the point.
Oh, we should have, in another call, we should have a long conversation about security, right?
Yeah.
Because the real vulnerability here is that the language that you use to program these things is the same language that you use to ask them a question, and it's not clear that they can tell the difference routinely between those two things. And so you get injection prompts as a major problem. Awesome. Well, so now, again, thank you. I'm going to try and get rid of you a second time. Let's see if I'm successful the second time.
You're good. Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you both. And enjoyed the conversation.
Let's do this again.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye now.